Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Kieran, how are you? How did the gritting go on Sunday? The grit that wasn't thrown directly in your face by the Baroness, of course.
Yes. It was slightly awkward in A&E 6 hours later when they had to surgically extract a shovel from me. But all was well. I've been trying to ingratiate myself with her by I took her to the Football Supporters Association Awards on Monday night, and they had free passion fruit martinis and free fizzy stuff, for alcohol style. So the Baroness took that as a challenge. Yeah, and we finally got home about 2 a.m.
No, that's nice. I like it. What was it? Passion fruit martini. Passion fruit martini. I'm not particularly fond of martini, but 3 ones. If only I'd been invited, Kieran, which is as big an indication that we didn't win that you can actually get. Yeah. It's like, well, you can come along, but it cost you 65 quid. Oh, we haven't won then. All right, fair enough. I hear. Yeah. Did you bump into anyone we know, like Rick Parry?
We sort of managed to avoid bumping into each other. But I did hand out one of the trophies, which is very nice, and lots of good people there. So yeah. Fun time had. I now feel that as we've been nominated on 4 occasions and lost on 4 occasions, I feel a bit like Jimmy White must have felt in the mid-1980s.
So you say, Kieran, you were invited to give an award, and you say that's very nice. I say that's taking the piss. It's like, you clearly haven't won because we haven't invited the other one, and we're asking you to give one of the prizes away. And then the fact that fucking Brighton fanzine won fanzine of the year as well. My 2 of my WhatsApp groups were, I think you could say, hot on Monday night. Hot. I also got a message from a friend of mine who said he went to see a local pantomime, and there was a character in it called the Baroness. So he said he now can't get, every time you mention the Baroness, he's not going to be able to get the picture out of his mind of this local actor dressed up in a terrible panto dame outfit. Anyway, enough of this chit chat, Kieran. I know you're tired, Kieran, because you had to be up very early for the media whoring, as you put it, for our first big story, which we knew the new broadcasting deal was coming, Kieran. But it's proper eye-watering figure, this one, Kieran, and a huge amount of games per season.
Yes. Very strange of the Premier League to announce this at 5 to 6 on a Monday night, especially as I was in a taxi with the Baroness at the time, and the phone started to go, and I immediately got what can only be described as the look, and we both know what the look is like. And I said, "What is it, Kieran?" The Premier League's got a new record TV deal. And what's it got to do with you? Might be needed. So,
that's a great impression.
Yes. I've got to confess, I found some of the reporting on this by sort of the Premier League, the way it's been presented, a little bit disingenuous. It says it's a record deal of £6.7 billion over 4 years, and that is a record amount, but the previous deals have been over 3 years. So, if I sell you 1 apple for £3, and I sell you 2 apples for £5, it's a record amount in terms of apple sales, but the price per apple has gone down. And as a result of this deal, Premier League clubs will be generating less money from the broadcast partners in 2030 than they will have been generating in 2016-17. So, over a course of 13 to 14 years, the domestic rights have effectively flatlined. And again, it's gone up by 4%, but you're ignoring the fact that the last deal was down by 10%. So don't try to tell us it's a record amount. And you're absolutely right, Kevin, to say that it's a record number of matches. And I've got to say, this is a fantastic deal for Sky. Sky is very much going to position itself as, and I think it's wanted to do this, but this sort of kind of Sky is going to be the home for football with regards to live broadcasting of matches. So the Premier League had 7 packages which it sold in the current round, and as we know, Amazon have sort of little amounts. Yeah, they get some just the current fixtures which are taking place and the ones which take place just after Christmas. They're allocated to Amazon, and Amazon loves that to bits because it gets people into their ecosystem at a time when they're buying Christmas presents, and it's on with the Christmas sale. So it's absolutely perfect for Amazon, but they were paying a pittance for their rights. And the reason for this was the Premier League wanted to go to the streaming companies, the likes of Amazon, Netflix, potentially Apple TV, Facebook, and so on, and say, look, we've got this absolutely amazing product. Do you fancy dipping your toe into it? So Amazon did, but it's not going to go any further. And I think it's notable that we're not going to have any streaming services involved in football now until the end of the decade. Remember that a couple of years ago, there was all this talk about Premflix and the Premier League taking over control. All of that, it's as if it's that discussion has never taken place. So we now have a position in which every single match which does not take place at 3:00 on a Saturday will be available for the armchair viewer. So I think that makes a lot of sense. People are saying, well, there's a lot more matches being broadcast. Why have they not managed to get a lot more money? And I think this is an acknowledgement that I'm going to see Brighton versus Brentford tonight. It's not going to generate a lot of outside interest. You have to be honest. And if therefore all of the clubs who are playing in Europe on a Thursday, you tend to have 3 or 4 matches kicking off at 2:00 on a Sunday. Only one of those was being broadcast historically. All that's going to happen is, I suspect, the same number of people who will be watching football, but the same number of people spread over 4 matches instead of 1. If football's on, you or I, we watch it. When we don't really, if it's on, we're not particularly bothered. Don't make an extra effort to watch it necessarily, but we'll watch it regardless. So I think from Sky's point of view, they could legitimately say, we're not willing to pay any more money because we don't think we're going to get an uptick in viewers. So it's a fantastic deal for Sky. TNT, I spoke to our friend, the secret broadcaster, on Monday evening, and he, she, or it replied to me, TNT, they've got the runt of the litter because they've got 12:30 on a Saturday, and 12:30 on a Saturday, I think that is the way of describing it, because you have to make that much more effort. You'll often be at the Parsons. If Palace are playing at home at 3:00, you might be looking at it on the background if it's on, if you're somewhere, but it's not critical. If you look at the attendances there's never much of an atmosphere in those particular matches because people have had to get up early and so on. And TNT, I think they've also got a couple of midweek sets of fixtures. So they're still involved. People again have been asking, well, why didn't Sky end up with all of the packages? They're not allowed to have all 5 packages. This comes effectively from the Competition and Markets Authority, or what we used to refer to as the Monopoly and Mergers Competition. You don't want all of Premier League football available to a single party. So fantastic deal for Sky. They were paying £10 million a match. That's dropped to around about 6.5. So they've got more matches for the same amount of money. Could it be good news for viewers? Yeah, you get a bit more choice, which is good. If Sky aren't paying any more than they were in 2016, we've just seen the government announce that the TV licence fee is going to be frozen. I think there's a good case for Sky for saying, well, because we're not paying any more money, we're going to freeze our subscription fees for Sky Sports for the rest of the decade. I think that would be really good for viewers if that does come about, because if they don't, they risk losing people to Fire Sticks, and you have to be honest. That is the elephant in the room when it comes to broadcast.
So, just to clarify a couple of points, Kieran, because I watched the Luton Arsenal game last night on Amazon. I watched 94 minutes of the Luton Arsenal game on Amazon because I decided this game is effectively over, and there's an Anne Boleyn documentary I hadn't watched for some time, so I switched to that. Cut to me looking at my phone 20 minutes later. So just to clarify, so it's only Premier League football will only be available on TNT and Sky.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So they've narrowed it down. It's because there were only 5 packages as opposed to 7. I think Amazon were paying something like £20 million for 20 matches. £1 million a match, which is a fantastic deal for them. But the Premier League's decided to get rid of that. They seem happy. I think it's actually it's a good deal. It's not a great deal from the Premier League's point of view, in the sense that the money's not gone down, and we've seen in France the bidders didn't meet the reserve price. There's no sign of any increase in Italy and Germany and Spain. So the broadcasters have effectively put their foot down. They've said, we can't increase subscription fees because we fear people will switch off or they will switch to other alternative means. We've got the two providers, and in a sense that's good, because if you wanted to watch as many matches as you could, you needed to have an Amazon Prime, TNT, and a Sky. So at least you only now need to have 2 instead of 3.
Well, I suppose in a way there's 3 providers, Kieran, because does this deal confirm that the BBC will be showing highlights for the rest of this decade, essentially?
Yes. So in terms of free to air, the BBC has retained those rights. You and I, we both go back to I first saw my first match of the day, 1969-70. So I think we've still got that affection for match of the day, even though I've already seen the goals on YouTube, because Sky put them on YouTube now. There's still something to me a little bit special about match of the day. I bet that could be the fact that I'm just getting on a bit.
No, I love match of the day. I've worked on it for 10 years. It's always a very special place in my heart. The TNT thing, Palace Liverpool on Saturday is the 12:30 kickoff on TNT, or as they keep saying this week, their traditional 12:30 kickoff, because they had a Saturday evening game last week and they were humpty about it all the way through. And as you say, TNT can talk about their traditional 12:30 kickoff as much as they want. I suspect that Selhurst Park, for the first time in a long time, may not be full for a Palace-Liverpool game, partly because it's a train strike and partly because it is that 12:30 kickoff, which fans don't seem to like. And as you say, you tend to... I only ever watch those games. If I'm at home, I don't watch that 12:30 kickoff. And if I'm in the Portons, I'll look up when somebody cheers because there's a goal scored. But I was in terms of the amount of games spread across Sky and TNT, no matter what they're on. I was at a meeting yesterday at the foundation at Palace, and there's some unease from a couple of the people from the actual club about, times are financially difficult. It's getting harder and harder each week to fill stadiums for clubs outside the top 6 and 7. You only had to look at the Wolves-Burnley game last night, and the stadium was far from full. It will be a sellout because a lot of those are season tickets. I suspect Palace-Bournemouth tonight will be far from full for various reasons. But I think there is some unease from the clubs outside of the digital top 6, 7 that this is yet another assault, because we know, yes, they have to show a certain amount of Palace-Brentford, Sheffield United games, but we know that the most attractive games are games that are likely to be competing for Palace fans' eyeballs, essentially.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and it's not just Palace fans' eyeballs; it's eyeballs of fans from EFL clubs, National League, and further down the pyramid. The blackout at 3 p.m. on a Saturday has been maintained, and I think there was thought, and it's been interesting observing the debate that's taking place on social media. I think those fans who, and I'm not going to dig them, those fans that support clubs but don't actually go to matches, sort of the more casual fan, or and they will say, well, I'm just as dedicated to my club as the people that do attend. They say, well, we want the 3 p.m. blackout to be lifted as well. I think that would have a detrimental impact. And there's a further issue, which is a story which we're coming to, is that with all of these matches now taking place at weekends, which are going to be broadcast, where does it leave women's football in terms of accessibility? And where does it leave Scottish football in terms of finding those slots in terms of broadcast? So again, there's been quite a hostile reaction from Scottish fans saying, why is English football getting so much money compared to the Scottish League? It's because the Premier League delivers in terms of viewing figures, and therefore it will always take priority. So there is a lot taking place there, and I think clubs are going to have to work harder. Some clubs are a bit complacent that we will turn up week in, week out. We were recording this early on Wednesday afternoon. I'm going to Brighton versus Brentford tonight. There will be significant gaps because we've got a rail strike, and the only way you can get to the ground is effectively by rail. So I think there'll be noticeable gaps, which is a shame. And the rail strike. I respect Avlef's position as an entitlement to strike, but it's impacting upon fans. If it's live on television, would you go and pay 30, 35 quid for a ticket? No, it's simple as that.
Now, Kieran, there are some fights. So, for example, shark versus eagle. Somebody says to me, who'd win in the fight between the shark versus an eagle? I will take an interest in that, but I don't really care what the outcome is. In the same way, if Scotland are playing Wales, I'd be quite happy if both of them won. I wouldn't be bothered if both of them lost. I'd enjoy the game, but it wouldn't worry me either way. So it is with a dispute between FIFA and agents. I've been observing it, Kieran. I'd have been quite happy again if both of them lost, but one of them hasn't.
Yes. For people not familiar with the story, FIFA, for reasons best known only to Gianni Infantino, decided that it was going to introduce a global rule that agents could not claim more than 3% commission in respect of a deal. Now, that could be increased to 6% if the agent was representing both a player and the club. And agents themselves responded to say, well, if we also do agency work for people in the entertainment industry. We do it for golfers. We do it for people in the NFL. We do it for cricketers. And there's no ceiling there. So why are we being picked upon? And FIFA said, tough. But what we have seen is a series of cases in individual countries where agents, and in this particular case, it's the big agents. It's like Wasserman and so on, who have taken this further, and they've successfully won their case. And this is a case for which will impact upon both the big agents and the small agents. For the sake of complete transparency, when this was heard in Lausanne in Switzerland at the Court for Arbitration for Sport in May, I was an expert witness on behalf of agents to present. And I'm a bit like you. I've not got a dog in the fight, but I have got a spreadsheet. And so
I just love the idea of people.
So my spreadsheet was called into action.
I love the idea of people, an illegal underground dogfight, going, who's that bloke with a spreadsheet? I don't know. Any of these dogs belong to him? Why has he got a spreadsheet then? I don't know, but it's clearly there.
So FIFA's ruling has been effectively nullified, and this means this is the fourth out of the 5 big European countries. So Spain, France, and Germany have all effectively decided in favour of the agents. We're still awaiting a case in respect of Italy. FIFA are saying, agents' fees have gone up significantly. They have gone up significantly, but the cake, whenever I'm looking at money and people say, footballers earn too much money or this, I say, well, there's 2 things you need to look at when it comes to distributing money. A, the size of the cake, and B, how you slice the cake. So the size of the cake has gone up a lot over the course of the last decade. So you can have the same slice in proportionate terms, which can result in a lot more money. I've never quite managed to work out why FIFA have got themselves into such a tiz about this, because they're not really involved at things from an agency point of view. I think they were simply looking for a simple scapegoat. What we live in a world in which demonising individual people or individual groups appears to be a way of deflecting attention from your own shortcomings. And perhaps we've seen that on a wider geo or political sphere as well. But I think FIFA's coming out of this now with a bit of a bloody nose.
Which is odd, Kieran, because I'm fairly certain on my reading of this subject that FIFA probably took a punt that 99% of all football fans would be on their side against agents. They probably thought that agents were very unpopular. And again, I'm not hinting that governments might take a similar approach, but FIFA probably thought, most football fans don't like agents. They won't be too fussed if we take them on. And they've taken them on and they've lost. And again, disappointingly, we haven't seen that predicted Gianni Infantino press statement saying, actually, this was a glorious victory for FIFA, and that another statue of him was going to be put up outside the headquarters. Kieran, we've spoken at length about one particular review into football, a review that you took part in. But another one has been taking place at the same time, which we've barely mentioned, and yet it's been very successful.
Yes, Karen Carney has had a report. She's taken evidence from a number of parties, including Football Finance, and she put out a written report which was very comprehensive, which contained broadly sort of 10 points in terms of going forwards. And the government's accepted every recommendation, which I think is pleasing. They're looking at things such as player welfare, player development, academy, increasing the diversification of people participating in the game, and also some form of system which will prevent, and this is an area we have discussed, will prevent the big six in the Premier League becoming the big six in the WSL, because at present the sport is going to struggle to have a big enough audience. And it was great to see. I think Bristol City, they hosted Manchester United at Ashton Gate, and they had 14,000. Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant for women's football. So things are heading in the right direction. How this will go forwards, is there going to be legislation on the back of this? We don't know. There's no indication of anything as yet, but I think it's a positive step. And as somebody that again presented to Karen's committee on some bits and pieces, I welcome the result.
It's somewhat disappointing, Kieran, although predictable, that whereas the Tracy Crouch review garnered all sorts of noise and column inches, there's been barely a mention of this in any of the press anywhere, broadcast or newspaper.
It is, and I think this is reflective of a much broader issue, in the sense that everybody's fighting for eyeballs, and after what can only be described as one of the most gobsmacking weekends of football in Premier League history in terms of those results and those matches that took place at the weekend. All of the discussions being based on that, and then we've got the Manchester City players sort of surrounding the referee, and the memes of Erling Haaland when he had a quiet word. That doesn't leave very much space. That doesn't leave very much time, and these things become they snowball. Once that Liverpool's victory in some of their goals, the Manchester City Spurs game, Newcastle beating Manchester United, and so on. These are all sort of big matches, and then there was another round of matches taking place midweek. It meant that there wasn't a lot of room The stories have been covered on the BBC website. The Guardian's always very good as well. But you're fighting for space, and the women's game it's a bit like rugby. It's a bit like cricket. Football and the Premier League, in my view, fantastic, brilliant product. It's become too dominant, and it's meant that everybody else is now fighting over scraps.
We had other games at the weekend, Kieran, in the second round of the FA Cup, prior to probably the most boring FA Cup third round draw I can remember in quite some time. Yes. But one of those games was
Stoke away for me.
One of the Everton at home, jeez. One of those games was Eastleigh versus Reading, and we praised Match Today earlier. I have to say, ITV's coverage before the game of Eastleigh versus Reading, which concentrated on the situation at Reading, I thought it was exemplary. The only disappointment was that you didn't turn up halfway through it, as you did on Match of the Day 2's coverage of the Everton situation. And also there was they spent a lot of time discussing the Reading situation, and they were rightly angry, and it was a very good analysis. And I was very pleased to see that ITV had... Eastleigh fans would probably be less happy, but I thought it was great the way they covered it. And also, basically, just didn't shy away from blaming the owner for this. It was like incompetent, useless, all sorts of things. So I was very impressed with that. But they had good reason to do so, Kieran, because... off the pitch, Reading hadn't been doing too badly in the last couple of games. They lost to Eastleigh. But again, I'll let you describe, the sponsors having to step in and help pay the wages of the staff. The players expressing their own embarrassment that they were offered wages and the staff weren't. It's just, I don't like swearing on this pod, Kieran, because producer guy normally, but it's a shit show, Kieran, and it's got to end somehow.
I think there is an end point in this. I agree with you entirely. ITV, Sam Matterface, who saw on Monday night, thought was really good. It's easy to sugarcoat things and make this all about the romance of the FA Cup, but there's much a broader issue. I can only describe the behaviour of Di Younger, the owner of Reading Football Club, as insidious, because to pay the players in order to ensure that you don't trigger another points deduction, but not to pay other members of staff. It's that insidious that the director of football didn't get paid, but the players did. It was that sort of really sneakily, Dick Dastardly himself would even think that's perhaps going a bit far. So the other members of staff, they've got direct debits, which will be, like we all do, go out on the 1st of the month. Well, the good news, we're recording this on Wednesday the 6th. I understand from reading the Reading Chronicle, and some of these local scribes, James Earnshaw at the local Reading paper, he's done a fantastic job, by the way, a bit like Chris Phillips at Southend. Lots of these local journalists have really rolled up their sleeves and had to get involved in, the tedious stuff. I'm a nerd, so Companies House and spreadsheets is my life. That journalists didn't sign up to do this, but they've all done a fantastic job. The staff will have had direct debits which have bounced. The staff will have had their credit rating negatively impacted by Di Younger's decision to only part pay their wages. Okay, the wages now have been paid, which is the good thing. I thought the approach taken by Reading fans should hugely be applauded. Non-violent direct action which gets attention. So they started lobbing tennis balls onto the pitch. So nobody's going to get hurt by a tennis ball, unless you're on the receiving end of a Roscoe Tanner 140 mile an hour. Tennis balls are fairly benign, as we both know. So they threw tennis balls. That gets the attention. On the back of this, and I thought this was really funny, a Reading fan arranged for a box of 12 tennis balls to be delivered to Di Younger's house via Amazon. And I think they've now got the response from Amazon, package handed across to the person at the house. So it's funny, it's smart, it's bringing attention to the issue as well. Your heart goes out to all of those people because, have I got a job at the end of December? Am I going to get paid? Because, lots of employers pay people a few days early at Christmas because of the cost of Christmas. Am I going to get paid? Yeah. So that's where we are. There are parties interested in buying the club. I think it is an attractive proposition because it's relatively close to London, relatively new stadium, decent sized stadium, history. They've been in the Premier League. So I think there is a case for availing ourselves of a sale. It's now, will the owner swallow pride and accept a fair price? Or because he's so rich, he doesn't have to, will he just continue to be awkward?
I rather hoped, reading that story about delivering tennis balls, that Di Younger and his family know their Shakespeare, because it's all very Henry V, sending a present of tennis balls to someone you want to take the piss out of. The wages have been paid, Kieran, and I can confirm, by the way, that today is Wednesday the 6th, because I've just opened the doors on my 3 advent calendars. So it is definitely Wednesday the 6th. We know the wages have been paid, or we think the wages have been paid to the staff, Kieran. Do we know if those wages were paid by the club, or did the sponsor come through, and were they paid by outside sources?
I believe they've been paid by the club.
Okay.
Now, it could be that the sponsors might have advanced some money to the club to enable, or it could be that Di Younger has managed to get money from wherever he keeps his stash.
Right. And indeed his money, Kieran. I thought what was good about ITV's coverage is that when the game was interrupted, and you could clearly see some Eastleigh fans applauding the interruption. And I thought what was very good was that there was no moaning from ITV, but they said this won't take long. You can't blame the fans for this. They also pointed out, which I thought was very good, that the Reading fans had written to the club, to Eastleigh and to the Eastleigh Supporters Association, to explain what they were doing and to apologise for any disruption. So I was very impressed. I've been impressed by the behaviour of everybody involved in this story, Kieran, except the man who owns the club. Who needs... If it's just his pride, Kieran, and we've seen this before with club owners, if it's just his pride doing it, then the man must realise he's going to bankrupt himself and his club if it's just his pride. But anyway, there's another club, Kieran, unfortunately, that I was going to say almost out of nowhere, but it has been bubbling under a little bit. And we've seen a great deal of distress from their fans on social media this week, and that's Morecambe.
Yes. This is, and I think this is an incredibly brave thing to do, this is effectively a vote of no confidence in the owners of Morecambe Football Club by the directors of Morecambe Football Club. People say, well, hold on, don't the owners appoint the director? The owners aren't interested in the football club. They're interested in making money. So the directors are effectively glorified volunteers. They're giving up their time. They're doing it for nothing or next to nothing. And they have effectively said that we no longer have any faith in the Bond Group, who also are the owners of Worcester Warriors Rugby Union Club, which is sadly no longer with us. One of the owners of the Bond Group is a gentleman called Colin Goldring, who was subject to a solicitor's regulatory authority hearing recently. And they said he cannot work for a law firm without their position. I think previously, when he was involved working with a law firm, it was for only described as sort of the ambulance chasing element of the legal profession, and and that sounds sort of cheap and nasty, and I don't intend it to be. But I if you're interested in taking this further, anybody who's listening, just read up about his background as to why the SRE, the solicitors regulatory body, decided to take on one of his members. Because look, as a chartered accountant, we don't tend to, you tend to look after your own, and somebody has to do quite a lot wrong before they get told effectively you can't prepare any more accounts or anything like that. So that's where we are in terms of Morecambe. The club has been up for sale, as we know, for a long period of time. Why has it not been sold? Because people are being awkward. People are, getting to the negotiating table and then moving the goalposts. And I've not been to Morecambe. It's a ground I want to go to at some point in time. But the fans of Morecambe deserve better. They deserve better owners than this. It's a small club. It's done very well to get to the EFL. It's very well to get to as far as League One, especially. But the way it's being treated is appalling.
Do we know if the owners have responded to this statement from the board of directors? Because basically what the board of directors said, the club is in serious danger of going out of business unless it's sold imminently, which, as you say, it's a brave thing for them to do, but also you could argue, being devil's advocate, that it might precipitate the owners doing something stupid, out of spite.
I don't think that they will respond in such a manner, because all that they care about is money, and if they put the club into liquidation, for example, they're going to get next to nothing. Morecambe Football Club is worth more as a going concern than as a liquidated set of assets. But no, the owners are probably too busy doing other stuff.
Mm.
Not impressive.
Can you give any optimism to Morecambe fans? Do you know if anyone is sniffing around, kicking tyres?
Yeah, there's always people that are interested, Kevin. The number of... I gave an investor presentation earlier this week in respect of a club. It's amazing the length and breadth of clubs. We've got new owners at Carlisle, we've got new owners at Gillingham, we've got new owners here, there, and everywhere. Morecambe is attractive, and unfortunately, there's too many Morecambe, Scunthorpe, Southend's, Rochdales, Readings around, but there's still a lot of interest in the game.
Mm. Well, unfortunately, our next two stories, talking of fans who deserve proper owners, are Southend and Scunthorpe. And first of all, Southend's new owners have issued an update, Kieran.
Yes. We were giving it two cheers, weren't we?
We were.
A couple of months ago. I think that's how we summarised it, because new owners have come in. I think Justin Rees, who is head of the consortium, we thought, right, Ron's gone. And Ron Martin has not conducted himself in a very likeable manner throughout all of his tenure as Southend. He's put money in, I'm not denying that. But we're 2 months down the line, and therefore fans were getting irritating, they were getting fed up, and they said that they were going to go round to Ron's house and protest on Tuesday night unless there was some form of update. So we have now had a sort of a formal update from the consortium, which is taking over the club. They've said they're still doing their due diligence, and this surprises me. It shouldn't take 9 weeks to do the equivalent of a surveyor's look around, and then sort of reading more about it. There's some sort of commitment by Ron Martin. I think this is a much broader issue. I think he's trying to get approval for some houses to be developed in Southend. And as part of that, he said, I will put in £20 million, even though I'm going, to develop Roots Hall. And he says, don't necessarily put that in writing. Trust me. Now, anybody who's had any connection...
Like the snake in Jungle Book.
That's right. Yeah, I'd rather trust the snake. So you can absolutely understand the degree of caution, because you don't want to be caught on the hoof. So things are taking longer than one would ideally like. It is a frustration for fans. Attendances have been good. The away element of support from Southend United fans has been magnificent for, again, the lower tiers of football. And I think it shows just how important the club is to a town. So, Ron Martin, just do the right thing. There's so many, a bit like Die Younger, the Bond Group. We're going more and more into this, and I'm not. It sounds like a bit of opportunism. This is why we need somebody to have overall responsibility for the game, who can hold people to account to a greater degree than the authorities at present.
Yeah, and for our next live shows coming up in spring, our wrong-uns countdown, Kieran, it's going to be quite difficult narrowing it down just to 5 wrong-uns, isn't it? The Scunthorpe...
We need Alan Fluff Freeman to do the full 40, I think.
The Scunthorpe story, Kieran, considering that just a few months ago the owners were threatening to move the club to a local non-league ground, I'm assuming that this story is good news, is it?
Yes, this is fantastic news.
Great.
Yeah,
Great.
It's so nice to be able to report something. Glanford Park has been bought by the New Showground Community Interest Company. So that meant that somebody had to go on company's house to get a new set of alerts. It's going to be controlled by fans, officials of the club, and local councillors. So it's very much sort of it's been given a grant by one of the government funds. North Lincolnshire Council will be responsible effectively for monitoring how that grant will be used. Going to create 100 jobs. Fantastic. Scunthorpe is it's well known as a steel city where the steel industry has been decaying for a period of time. There's going to be 150 homes created, specialising in facilities for elderly people, for people in need of care. So I think there's lots of positives, and it gives certainty as well. So yeah, it's fantastic to be able to report such a positive story as this, and fair play to everybody involved, from Michelle, who's come in to effectively run the club, to people like the Iron Trust, to people that run the fans message board and so on, all of whom have had to put up with some pretty unpleasant behaviour from people who I'm not going to name because they're pretty unpleasant people.
Yeah, and fair play too, Kieran, to all those Scunthorpe fans who may not have got involved in a trust or a campaign or whatever, but still suffered on a daily basis from the activities of their club owners, people who for various reasons just want to be a fan. Fair play to them as well, and it is lovely just for once to be able to create a positive story. You will remember, Kieran, just a couple of weeks ago we interviewed sports lawyer Josh Charalambous, who specialises in advising people who are buying or thinking of investing into football clubs, and he told us about the increasing interest in the US from investment companies into getting involved in English football. And off the back of that, this is a rather strange press release, Kieran.
Yes, this is an American investment company called Lawrance Capital, which says, we have been involved. We were approached a few months ago to put money into an English football club by an individual. We've subsequently got involved and had some form of relationship with the club, but it now turns out that the person that we were working with has proven to be not as they claim to be. So all of this is very weird. So it hasn't named the club, although a lot of Rochdale fans have put 2 and 2 together, and they seem to think that it could be their club. And who this individual is has not been named either. So it's all very bizarre. So why would an American investment company get involved? Why would they say these things? It's testament to the fans of Rochdale and other clubs that they everybody's monitoring. Everybody's sort of becoming forensic amateur detectives and doing this. So I've also seen a pitch by an investment company in respect of a non-league club based in the north of England. And again, it won't name the club. There's a lot of things going around in circles at present, and trying to get to the bottom, it's really difficult.
Ipswich Town, Kieran, it's always a club enjoyed visiting until they knocked down the Drummond Monkey, which is the football equivalent of knocking down Westminster Abbey. Shameful behaviour. But they're having a great season, Kieran, on and off the pitch. Ipswich fans will be very happy, I imagine, at the moment, except another club is attempting to wipe the smile off their face.
Yeah, they're going to Ellen Road shortly, and Leeds have said, looking forward to meeting you. You're more than welcome. £47 for a ticket. And Ipswich Town fans are going, you what? Now, the reason why this is the case, and I will first of all put across the Leeds United point of view. Leeds United are the biggest club in the Championship, in my opinion. Okay. And they say, as a result of that, we've always had to pay premium prices when we've gone away. And therefore, unless we can get the opposition before the start of the season or early in the season to agree reciprocal prices, we're going to charge you what we charge our own fans to pay for a walk-up ticket, which is £47. Now, when Leeds played at Ipswich earlier in the season, there wasn't an agreement, but Ipswich said, well, we're going to charge you £34. So Ipswich fans are unhappy. Leeds fans, I think it's fair to say, are being quite defensive of their club. I think it's a much broader issue. This is second-tier football. I don't care whether Leeds United are charging £47 for home fans or away fans. It strikes me as that's an awful lot of money. And I understand the position, well, if we're charging home walk-up fans £47, then we're charging you no more to be a few blocks away. But the Premier League has had this cap of £30 for some time. I think it asks a much broader question. Why is it that club owners and executives in the EFL cannot acknowledge what away fans bring to a game in terms of atmosphere, in terms of spending in the local town or city and so on? Why can't they just agree, as Premier League owners have done, to say, right, we're going to say £30 or £35, whatever it's going to be, and that's going to be the upper limit. Because I think I know when I go to Arsenal, we only charge £26, for example, for away fans, which is fantastic. So it does seem a bit people pointing fingers at each other. Ipswich fans are unhappy about it. Leeds fans are defending their position because they say, well, we always have to go and pay the highest level of prices. That's a function of being Leeds United, unfortunately. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I know at Brighton we've got A, B, and C games, and home fans have to go and pay more if it's Manchester United or Liverpool or Palace. Palace is always an A fixture and so on. Whereas if it's Burnley or Sheffield United or Luton, the ticket prices tend to be cheaper. So I think there's a much broader issue and discussion to be had. But intuitively, £47 to see second-tier football just feels a bit high, especially for somebody that's already had to travel a fair distance. And also having seen how much Leeds United are charging their own fans in terms of coach travel. That seems very high to me as well. But that's a separate discussion.
Our penultimate story takes us to Newcastle, Kieran, and I'm slightly worried about this because I'm not entirely sure how Newcastle are going to be able to afford to pay this, but they could have a financial penalty coming their way, Kieran.
Yes. This is something which we have seen disclosed in the Newcastle United accounts for the last few years. HMRC, as we know, they used to have two, but I think they now have one person looking into football clubs. Have investigated the nature of agents' fees and image rights companies which have been set up in order to be what Jimmy Carr would describe as tax efficient, what other people might describe as not paying enough tax. And High Court has ruled that HMRC had a legitimate claim against Newcastle, and certainly if you look at the accounts of some other clubs in the Premier League, you will see reference to this. So they've ended up having to go and pay £6 million in tax, which will go a small way to the amount of money that's being lost to the Treasury due to a series of fraudulent claims being made by the government's Eat Out to Catch Bugs campaign of a few years ago, and so on. So that's where we're at. But it does relate to the Mike Ashley period of ownership, and it's got nothing to do with Amanda Staveley and PIF and the Reuben brothers. It's because it's tax. FFP is based on pre-tax profits, so there's no FFP implications. I suspect the owners will just pay it immediately, because if there's one set of owners that can afford to pay any bill immediately, it's Ron Martin. No, sorry, it's PIF.
I don't know whether to be annoyed or proud that HMRC appear to have more people keeping an eye on my tax affairs than they have keeping an eye on the Premier League's tax affairs. Our last story, Kieran, you may remember our discussion about particular fights that you have no interest in what the outcome is. In this one, for once, I'm on the side of the US government for once, because cryptocurrency. We've seen. I won't name them, Kieran, for reasons of sensitivity, but there's a major player in the game that have offered several Premier League clubs donations of a lot of money, all of which have been downgraded in terms of the amount of money they've now offered. But Cristiano Ronaldo may be regretting being the public face of, which I'm not Bin Face, because our dear friend Count Bin Face will get in touch with us again, as he did before, but he's been the public face of Binance.
Yes. So Binance, which is the largest cryptocurrency exchange in the world, mainly because FTX, which is its rival, was declared bankrupt a few months ago. And if anybody's following, there's some really good podcasts about the guy that used to run FTX. I think it's fair to say his lifestyle was lavish, to put it mildly. So Binance, which for reasons best known to itself, is based in the Cayman Islands. That's that doyen of transparency. It asked Cristiano Ronaldo to be the face of some NFTs. Remember our old friend NFTs?
Indeed.
We were told we were going to be the saviour of football.
Indeed.
And so that you had the opportunity to buy a cartoon version of Cristiano Ronaldo with various gurning faces. And these were sold in November 2022. And when they were launched for a minimum price of $77, some went for far more, because for some of these tokens, there were 1,000 minted. Look at me, Kevin. I'm down with the kids. I'm using the language. When they dropped, again, I'll be wearing the baseball cap back to front and singing E17 songs in any moment now. So Cristiano Ronaldo is a fantastic brand in his own right. He has more social media followers than any football club on the planet. Now, why do crypto companies, why do NFT companies want to get involved with football? Well, it gives them legitimacy. It gives them credibility. It gives them normalization. And then the whispering campaigns of, you can make money on this. Now, the cryptocurrency companies won't do this themselves. They will rely on their army of useful idiots to say that you can. This is an investment. And what we've always said on the show: if you want a digital version of a Panini card of a footballer, go and fill your boots. We've got absolutely no objection. But when I get the Cameroon left back from the 2014 World Cup, if I get a sticker of him and stick it in my Panini collection, I'm quite happy. But I don't say, I'm not going to go all sort of Del Boy and say, as a result of this, I'm going to be a millionaire one day. But that's the noise that comes out of these. So these were sold for $77. And what were you getting for your $77 or your your much higher figure for the more rarer versions of the drop, you were effectively getting a certificate of ownership. You were getting a digital receipt. And then people saying, well, what am I going to do with this? I can now look at it. Anybody else can look at it. The only difference is between me and you is that I've got a receipt. And people therefore started to sell them, and the price fell from $77 to $1. So there was a complete collapse. And what we have now seen is that as a result of this, there's been a class action lawsuit from US investors to say, we feel that we've been scammed and that Cristiano Ronaldo has used his celebrity status to persuade us to buy something which is inherently worthless, and we have suffered as a result. So what will happen on the back of this? I spoke to the secret crypto lawyer, and he said it depends. which this has come as a surprise to listeners, I'm sure. There could be a settlement. It's likely to be an out of court settlement. He says whoever's involved in the lawsuit, the lawyers will become very rich on the back of this. This tends to be the case. But I think a word of warning: if you are in that position to be an influencer in society, that can certainly make you a very wealthy person, but it does come with a sense of responsibility. And what we are seeing is, John Terry, Michael Owen, Paris Hilton, Cristiano Ronaldo, many stars of NFL, NBA, and so on. They've just taken the easy money, and people have lost as a result. And you would hope that these people would have a degree of conscience. So it's a $1 billion lawsuit, I believe. It won't be a $1 billion final settlement. If there is one, Cristiano Ronaldo will not be out of pocket. He will still be a very wealthy young man, whatever's of this. But once again, NFTs and football, very, very dangerous bedfellows, as we've said from day one.
I assume Cristiano Ronaldo is not a US citizen, Kieran, but does that make a difference?
I don't think so, because he has marketed this in the US, presumably, and therefore will come under some form of US law.
Yeah. Speaking of being down with the kids, I remember laughing very much many years ago when Barry Cryer said on stage, does anyone know where I can buy one of those back-to-front baseball caps all the young kids are wearing? Which in anybody else's hands would have been a terrible joke, because it was Barry. You couldn't help but laugh. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution to the pod as well, that'd be very kind of you. It will get you access to our chat community and our regular quizzes, one of which is coming up, I believe, very soon, Kieran, because it's a Christmas quiz, so I guess it won't be March or April. So that's coming up, and you can do all that by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Kieran and I will be in Hastings next week for an event with East Sussex Libraries. It's on Wednesday the 13th in the evening. We'll be talking about our new book and about football finance. All the tickets have gone, but there is a waiting list, and if you want to be put on that waiting list, please click in the show notes below to register for a chance to get a ticket. And if you'd like to buy our book or one of our other books, or get yourself a Price of Football t-shirt, you can find details on the same website, priceoffootball.com. We'll be back on Monday with our questions pod. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you, as always, for the feedback. It was nice to meet so many people who listened to the show at the FSA Awards. Barry Glendenning, who went up to collect the Best Podcast Award. He was very charming, but I managed to pick up a few tips, because he said when they've done their live shows, he's noticed the demographic of people that attend the Guardian Football Weekly live show. He said they are universally single, hairy men with poor personal hygiene. So I've spent the last 48 hours on Grindr, looking at single hairy men, trying to persuade them to take an interest in football finance. So, next year, Kevin, it could be us. It could be us. We might have managed to turn them to come into football finance fandom.
They'll all be wondering what this euphemism is, looking for a football finance fan. What does that mean? All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.